My name is Eulalia Brown, and I am 74 years old. I raised my son with these same hands. These hands cooked his food. These hands washed his school clothes. These hands held his head when he cried at night. So when I dialed his number that morning and heard, "This number is no longer in service," something inside me cracked clean in half. I stood in my kitchen, holding the phone like it had betrayed me. I dialed again. Same message. I checked the number. Same number I had used for years. My knees weakened, and I sat down slowly. "He changed his number," I whispered. "And he didn't tell me." If you're new here, listen close. Before I go on, let me say this gently. If you love stories about real pain, real strength, and grandmothers who refuse to be erased, please subscribe, like, and turn on the bell so you don't miss what comes next. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? I want to know who's sitting with me right now. The shock came after the silence. At first, I made excuses for him. Maybe his phone broke. Maybe he lost it. Maybe he's busy. That's what mothers do. We protect our children, even from the truth. But then I remembered the fight. The fight he thought I'd forget. 3 weeks earlier, my son stood in the same kitchen. His voice was cold. His eyes were hard. "You're always playing the victim," he said. I remember gripping the counter so I wouldn't fall. "I just asked where my money went," I told him. He laughed. That laugh still rings in my ears. What he did before he disappeared. He had asked to help with my bills. Said it was easier if he handled things online. I trusted him. Why wouldn't I? I am his mother. But after that conversation, my rent notice came late. My lights flickered. My account balance didn't make sense. And when I tried to ask him, he vanished. The realization that hurt more than silence. Changing his number wasn't the worst part. The worst part was what it meant. He didn't just want distance. He wanted escape. From me. From questions. From what he did. As I sat there, staring at the dead phone, I felt tears rise. But then something else rose too. Memory. Because a child can change a number. But he can't change the past. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. The drawer groaned when I pulled it open. Not loud. Just enough to sound like it remembered things I had tried to forget. Inside were envelopes tied with string, bank letters folded thin from being read too many times, and a small notebook with my handwriting on every page. I sat on the bed and spread them out. My hands shook. Not from age. From knowing. Why I always kept records. My mother taught me one thing before she died. "Baby," she said, "love people but write things down." So I did. Dates. Amounts. Promises. Every time my son said, "I'll pay it back." Every time he said, "Trust me." I trusted him. But I also wrote it down. I found the page from 2 years ago. March 14, he said he needed help just for 1 month. I remembered that day clearly. He stood at my door with his head low. "Mama, I just need a little help. I'll fix it." I hugged him. Because that's what mothers do. When help turned into control. Then the bills changed. Not all at once. Little things. Mail stopped coming. Passwords were updated. Statements were handled. "You don't need to worry about all that," he told me once. I got you. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. The second call that never came. I turned the page. June 2, he promised to call back. He never did. That was the first time my phone stayed silent for days. I blamed myself. Maybe I talked too much. Maybe I asked too many questions. That's what silence does. It makes you blame yourself. The night I almost gave up. I pressed my hand to my chest as I read. There was a note written in shaky ink. Rent late, lights warning, don't panic. I remembered sitting in the dark that night, whispering prayers into the air, asking God what I did wrong as a mother. The moment I stopped crying, I closed the notebook, and something inside me shifted, because the truth was clear now. My son didn't disappear because he was busy. He disappeared because the lies were catching up. The sound of a knock. Just then, a knock hit my front door. Hard. Unexpected. My heart jumped. I hadn't told anyone about the number change. No one should be here. I stood slowly, every nerve awake. The voice on the other side. Mom, a man's voice called. Not my son's. A stranger's. I need to talk to you about your accounts. My breath caught. Accounts. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I didn't open the door right away. I pressed my hand flat against my chest and listened to my own breathing. Slow, careful, the way you breathe when you're trying not to fall apart. Ma'am, the man called again. My name is Calvin Reed. I work with the utility office. Utility. That word snapped me back into my body. I opened the door just enough to see him. He was young, maybe mid-30s, holding a clipboard and a folder tucked under his arm. His face wasn't angry, it was worried. Yes, I said. He glanced down at his papers, then back at me. Are you Ms. Eulalia Brown? I nodded. I'm here because your electricity account shows repeated changes, he said, and a payment reversal we didn't authorize. My knees weakened. I held the doorframe. The words I was afraid to hear. Reversal, I asked. Yes, ma'am, Calvin said gently. Someone switched the account holder name, then tried to switch it back when the balance went negative. My ears rang. That's not possible, I whispered. I never asked for that. Calvin's eyes softened. That's why I'm here. When the truth starts to knock loud. He asked if he could come in. I hesitated, then stepped aside. He sat at my small kitchen table, while I clutched my notebook like it was a shield. Ms. Brown, he said carefully, the changes were made online. Whoever did it had full access. I swallowed. My son, I said. I gave my son access. Calvin didn't look surprised. He looked sad. He opened the folder. Pages slid out, dates, numbers, red marks. This started almost 3 years ago, he said. Small transfers at first, late fees covered up by new logins. 3 years. My vision blurred. That's not all, he added quietly. There were multiple accounts linked, Calvin continued. Water, electricity, internet, all under your name. I felt heat rush to my face. I thought I was losing my mind, I said. Things kept going missing. You weren't, he replied. Where did the money go? I whispered. Calvin paused, then said, to a number that was changed recently. My son's number. The one that no longer worked. That's when it hit me. He didn't change his number to avoid me. He changed it to disappear. Calvin closed the folder. Ms. Brown, I need to be honest with you, he said. This could get complicated. I straightened my back. I've lived a long life, I said. Tell me anyway. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. If you don't act soon, Calvin repeated, they'll assume you approved everything. Those words sat heavy on my chest. Approved. As if I would ever approve being slowly erased from my own life. I looked down at my hands, old hands, strong hands, hands that had worked, cooked, prayed, and paid bills long before computers decided things for us. I didn't approve anything, I said firmly. Not one thing. Calvin nodded. I believe you. That small sentence almost broke me. I pushed my notebook toward him. I wrote things down, I said. Every time he asked, every time he promised. Calvin opened it carefully, like it mattered. Because it did. Dates lined up. Amounts matched. Notes filled in the gaps no system could explain away. This helps, he said quietly. A lot. For the first time since my son's number went dead, I felt something close to relief. Calvin explained it piece by piece. How accounts were switched just long enough to pull money out. How passwords were changed, then changed back. How fees were hidden inside, help. He knew exactly how far he could go without being noticed, Calvin said. I closed my eyes. He learned that patience from me. Part of me wanted to defend him. He didn't always used to be like this, I said softly. Calvin looked up. Most people who do this weren't always bad. That truth hurt more than anger ever could. There are two paths, Calvin said. You can stay quiet and fix the damage slowly, or you can speak up now and protect yourself. Protect myself. I had spent my whole life protecting everyone else. My children. My family. Their feelings. When had I protected me? I didn't answer right away. I thought about the nights in the dark. The unpaid bills. The shame I carried that wasn't mine. Then I thought about my son changing his number. Cutting me off. Leaving me to clean up his mess alone. I'm done being quiet, I said. Calvin exhaled, like he'd been waiting for that. I'll flag the accounts, he said. Freeze changes, but this won't stay small. I nodded. Nothing that matters ever does. He stood, gathered his papers, and paused at the door. One more thing, he said. Someone already tried to access your account again, this morning. My heart jumped. Did they get in? No, he said, because the number they used doesn't work anymore. My son's old number. After Calvin left, I sat alone at the table. The house was quiet. Too quiet. But now I understood something clearly. Silence wasn't just absence. It was a warning. And my son's silence was screaming. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. My phone buzzed again. I stared at it like it might bite me. Mom, we need to talk. That was all it said. No apology. No explanation. No, are you okay? Just like him, to decide when we talk, how we talk, and what we talk about. I didn't reply right away. For once, I didn't rush to make him comfortable. I looked around my kitchen. The light over the sink flickered. The fridge hummed like it was tired. A stack of unpaid notices sat neatly on the counter. While he was changing numbers, I was praying the lights stayed on. While he was hiding, I was blaming myself. That thought hardened something in me. We need to talk. Not I'm sorry. Not I was wrong. Just talk. Like this was a misunderstanding. Like he hadn't left me alone in the dark. I called Denise. He finally reached out, I said. She didn't sound surprised. Of course he did, she replied. They always come back when the truth gets close. What should I do? I asked. She paused. Whatever you do, she said, don't meet him alone and don't let him rush you. Rush. That's how he always won. I won't lie. Part of me wanted to text back right away. To ask where he'd been. To ask if he was okay. To ask why he did this. That part of me was still a mother. But another part, older, wiser, had finally woken up. And she whispered, wait. After an hour, I typed back. You changed your number. You took my money. You left me afraid in my own home. If you want to talk, it won't be on your terms. I stared at the message. Then I hit send. My heart raced. But I didn't regret it. His reply came fast. Too fast. You're overreacting. I was just stressed. I'll explain everything. Explain. Another word that used to work on me. Not anymore. The lie slipped out. Then another message came. I didn't mean for it to go that far. That sentence stopped me cold. That far. So he knew. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I picked the phone back up. My fingers felt steady now. Not angry. Not shaking. Steady like someone who finally understands what's been happening to her. I didn't mean for it to go that far. I whispered the words out loud. That far where? I asked the empty room. The question he didn't expect. I typed slowly. What exactly did you mean for it to be? The dots appeared. Disappeared. Then appeared again. I could almost see him packing, trying to find the right lie. The excuse he chose. I was just borrowing it. I planned to put it back. You know I would never hurt you. Borrowing. From his own mother. Without asking. Without telling. Without caring what happened if I couldn't pay rent. I felt something heavy lift off my chest. Because now I wasn't guessing anymore. The memory that hurt the most. I remembered the day he learned to ride a bike. He fell hard. Scraped his knee. Cried like his heart was breaking. I carried him inside and said, "It's okay, baby, I've got you." Now he was grown. And he'd left me bleeding, financially, emotionally, without even looking back. I stopped softening the truth. I typed again. Borrowing means asking. Borrowing means caring if I'm okay. You disappeared. This time, he didn't answer right away. Minutes passed. Then, I panicked. I didn't think you'd notice so soon. There it was. Notice. Not care. Not feel. Notice. The truth finally had a shape. I sat back in my chair. So it wasn't a mistake. It was a calculation. He thought I was old. Confused. Too tired to fight. And that hurt worse than losing money. The line I drew in ink. I took a deep breath and wrote the words I'd been afraid of for years. You don't get access to my life anymore. Not my money. Not my accounts. Not my silence. My heart pounded as I sent it. But I didn't feel weak. I felt clear. He tried one last time. The phone rang. I let it ring. And ring. And ring. When it stopped, a voicemail appeared. I didn't play it. Some apologies come too late to be heard. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I didn't sleep much that night. Every small sound felt louder than it should have been. The hum of the fridge, the creak of the floor when the house settled. Even the wind brushing against the window made my heart jump. I had locked every door. Twice. Still, fear sat beside me like it had a key of its own. The thought that wouldn't leave. If my own son could do this. That thought kept circling back. If he could take my money. Change his number. Leave me alone to clean up his mess. Then who else knew I was vulnerable? Who else thought I wouldn't notice? Morning brought no peace. When morning came, I made tea and stood by the window, watching the street like I'd never really seen it before. Neighbors walked their dogs. Cars passed like normal. Life went on. But mine felt different. Like a door had opened that couldn't be closed again. The mail that made my hands shake. Around noon, I heard the mail slot clatter. I almost ignored it. But something told me not to. I picked up the envelopes slowly. Most were bills. Then I saw one that didn't belong. No return address. Just my name. Written too neatly. The note inside. I opened it carefully. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No greeting. No signature. Just one sentence. You should let this go before it gets harder. My stomach dropped. Fear turned into anger. I sat down hard at the table. Let it go. After everything. After the nights in the dark. The shame. The silence. I felt my hands curl into fists. This wasn't just my son anymore. Someone else was involved. The call I had to make. I didn't want to call Denise again. I hated sounding scared. But I did anyway. She listened quietly while I read the note out loud. When I finished, she said one word. Good. Good, I repeated. Yes, she said, because now you know this isn't just in your head, and because whoever wrote that is nervous. Why that scared them more. Nervous people make mistakes, Denise continued, and mistakes leave trails. I looked at the note again. Suddenly, it didn't feel powerful. It felt desperate. The shift inside me. I placed the note back into the envelope. Carefully. Like evidence. Then I stood up straight. I wasn't going to hide. I wasn't going to shrink. If they thought fear would stop me, they didn't know me at all. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. My heart started beating fast. I leaned closer to the small screen by the door. It was him. My son. Standing on my porch like he had every right to be there. Older. Tired. Eyes darting around like he was afraid someone might see him. I didn't open the door. The knock that felt too heavy. He knocked once. Then again. Mom, he called softly. Please. Please. That word used to melt me. Not tonight. I spoke through the door. What do you want? I asked. My voice surprised me. It didn't shake. I just want to talk, he said. You didn't answer my calls. I almost laughed. You changed your number, I replied. Silence. The lie tried to stand up. I was going to explain, he said. When? I asked. He didn't answer. The truth slipped out again. There's people involved now, he said quietly. You don't understand how serious this is. My blood ran cold. So you admit it, I asked. Another pause. Then it went further than I planned. Those same words again. The boundary I finally spoke. You don't come to my house without permission, I said. You don't take from me. And you don't threaten me, directly or indirectly. I'm not threatening you, he said quickly. Then stop trying to scare me, I replied. The moment he lost control. His voice cracked. They'll come after me if you keep talking, he said. And if they come after me, they'll come after you. There it was. The reason for the note. The reason for the silence. I made my choice. I stepped closer to the door. You should have thought about that before you used my name, I said calmly. He stepped back. For the first time. He looked small. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. The headlights stayed on. Bright. Unblinking. My son froze on the porch. I watched his shoulders stiffen through the door camera, like his body already knew what his mouth hadn't said yet. That's them, he whispered. I felt my stomach tighten, but I didn't step back. Fear tried one last time. Mom, please, he said urgently, turning back toward the door. You don't know who you're dealing with. I spoke slowly. You didn't know who you were dealing with when you used my name. The words surprised even me. Because they were true. The car didn't leave. The engine idled. Someone inside was watching. Waiting. My son wiped his face with his sleeve. They think you're just an old woman, he said. Easy, quiet. I straightened my back. They thought wrong. The thing he finally admitted. They told me to keep you calm, he said, to make sure you didn't ask questions. My chest burned. So you lied, I said. You stole, I continued. And then you tried to scare me into silence. He didn't deny it. I didn't open the door. I stayed behind it. Safe. Firm. You need to leave, I said. Now. He looked at the car again. They won't let me, he whispered. That's when I understood. He wasn't protecting me. He was hiding behind me. The decision I didn't explain. I reached into my pocket, held my phone, and dialed. Not the police. Someone else. Someone who already knew. The car pulled closer. The driver's door opened. A man stepped out. Tall. Dark jacket. Hands in pockets. He didn't knock. He didn't shout. He just stood there, watching. I spoke loud enough for both of them. You picked the wrong house, I said through the door. The man looked up at the camera. Smiled. That smile chilled me more than fear ever could. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I did not move. I did not open the door. I did not answer my son when he whispered my name again. The house felt like it was holding its breath with me. The man outside spoke first. Ma'am, the man said calmly, looking straight into the door camera. We just want to talk. I knew that voice. Smooth voices always hide sharp things. I have nothing to say, I replied. He smiled again. That's not true, he said. Your son says you have everything to say. I felt my son flinch beside the door. My son finally broke. They promised me, my son cried. They said it was just paperwork, just borrowing your name. I turned toward the door, my voice steady. And when it stopped being paperwork, silence. They said you wouldn't understand, he whispered. That hurt more than any threat. The man changed his tone. Let's not make this hard, the man said. We can fix this tonight. I laughed. A small laugh. A tired laugh. You don't fix theft, I said. You only return what you stole. The smile vanished from his face. The truth slipped out. You told them I was sick, I said to my son. You told them I was confused. Tears ran down his face. I didn't think you'd fight back. I closed my eyes. Neither did I. The message that changed everything. My phone buzzed again. Another message. They are watching the house. Do not open the door. My hands trembled, but my voice didn't. You need to leave, I said louder. Both of you. The man stepped closer. We're past that. A knock that wasn't gentle. Bang. The door shook. My heart jumped, but I stood firm. Bang. Mom, my son shouted, please. I spoke through the door, my voice low and clear. You made your choice, I said. Now I'm making mine. Something unexpected happened. A second car pulled up. This one did not idle. It stopped hard. Doors opened. Footsteps fast. The man outside stiffened. My son looked confused. Then afraid. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. The night broke open with voices. Hands where I can see them. Step away from the door. The calm man's smile disappeared completely. My son pressed his back against the wall, shaking like a child caught stealing sugar. I stayed still behind the door, my heart pounding so loud I thought everyone could hear it. The men who arrived were not strangers. I recognized the voice calling orders. Not from the street. From my past. From years ago, when I still believed people came when you asked for help. Ma'am, a firm voice said toward the door, softer now. You can come out, you're safe. Safe. That word felt heavy. My son dropped to his knees. I didn't know it was this bad, he sobbed. I swear, Mom, I didn't know. I finally opened the door just enough to see. The smiling man was no longer smiling. His hands were raised. His eyes were cold. You lied, I said to my son. You changed your number, but you couldn't change the truth. He looked up at me. I was scared. So was I replied. Every day. The paper trail came alive. One of the men stepped forward. Ma'am, we've been tracking identity misuse, he said. Your name showed up everywhere. Loans. Properties. Signatures I never made. My son covered his face. They told me you wouldn't notice, he whispered. I swallowed hard. I noticed the moment you stopped calling. The smiling man finally spoke again. You raised him well, he sneered. He just needed a push. Before I could answer, the officer cut him off. You'll speak later. They turned him away from my house. From my life. The worst truth finally came out. My son reached for me. I stepped back. You told them I was already gone, I said quietly. You buried me while I was still breathing. His mouth opened. No words came. The officer asked me a question. Ma'am, he said gently. Do you want to press forward tonight? I looked at my son. At the years I carried him. At the silence he left me with. I want everything exposed, I said. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. There's more your son hasn't told you yet. Those words sat in the air like smoke. I gripped the edge of the table to stay steady. My son stared at the floor, his shoulders shaking. What more? I asked. My voice sounded calm, but inside, everything was cracking. The officer looked at him, not me. Tell her, he said. My son's voice finally broke. I didn't just give them your name. My son whispered. I gave them your history. I felt a sharp pain in my chest. What does that mean? I asked slowly. He swallowed. They asked questions about you, your habits, your medical records, your signature. I told them everything. The room felt smaller. You studied me, I said. Like I was already gone. He nodded. The betrayal went deeper than money. They made files, the officer added. Personal ones. I closed my eyes. Files meant control. Control meant danger. One of the men pulled out a folder and placed it on the table. My name was written on it. In ink that wasn't mine. I opened the folder with shaking hands. Inside were copies of my ID. My old address. Even a photo of me sitting on my porch. My breath caught. You watched me, I whispered. My son cried openly now. They said it was just paperwork, that you'd never know. I looked at him. You erased me while I was alive, I said. That's worse than stealing. The smiling man's final lie was exposed. The officer turned to me again. That man you saw tonight, he said. He's not just a collector. My heart sank. He finds people with family problems, the officer continued. He uses trust as a weapon. I laughed once, bitter and dry. He picked the right house, I said. My son tried to reach me again. Mom, he said softly. I'll fix this, I promise. I stepped back. No, I said. You don't fix what you chose. The words surprised even me. But they felt true. A new choice was put before me. The officer lowered his voice. We can protect you, he said. But we need your cooperation and your strength. I looked at the door. At the quiet night outside. At the life I almost lost. I'm done being quiet, I said. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I did not sleep that night. I sat in my old chair by the window, watching the street like it might confess something if I stared long enough. The house felt different now, like it knew the truth had been spoken out loud. At dawn, the officer returned. He didn't knock. He waited. That alone told me everything was about to change. The morning after silence breaks, You ready? He asked gently. I nodded. I've been ready longer than I knew, I said. Inside, my son sat on the couch, eyes red, hands shaking. He didn't look like the boy I raised. He looked like someone who had just realized that running doesn't erase footsteps. I'll go with you, he said quickly. I'll explain everything. I looked at him. No, I said. Today I speak. The first door we opened. The officer led us to a small office building across town. Plain, quiet, forgettable. That's how they like it, he said. Inside, the air smelled like paper and old coffee. A woman behind the desk looked up and froze when she saw me. Her smile slipped. You're not supposed to be here, she said. I leaned forward. And yet, I replied, here I am. The lie that didn't hold. She glanced at my son. You said she was. She stopped herself. I finished it for her. Gone, I asked calmly. Forgotten, conveniently quiet. Her silence was answer enough. The officer placed the folder on the desk. This ends today, he said. My son finally saw what he'd built. They showed us screens. Records. Messages. My name passed around like a password. My son covered his mouth. I didn't know it went this far, he whispered. I didn't look at him. That's the lie people tell themselves, I said. That ignorance is innocence. A choice that couldn't be taken back. The officer turned to me. We can stop this, he said. But it will be loud, messy, permanent. I thought of every birthday I showed up to. Every phone call I answered. Every excuse I made for him. Good, I said. I'm done being quiet. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. The woman's hand froze midair. Her phone lay on the desk like a loaded weapon. Please, she said softly, eyes darting between the officer and my son. You don't understand how dangerous this is. I let out a slow breath. Oh, I said, my voice steady as stone. I understand perfectly. The truth didn't need permission. The officer picked up the phone and slid it into his pocket. This conversation is over, he said. And so is your operation. My son stood up suddenly. Wait, he said. This isn't what it looks like. I turned to him then, really looked at him. Then tell me, I said. What does it look like when a son sells his mother's silence? He opened his mouth. No words came out. A past that refused to stay buried. They took us to a back room, plain walls, one table, no windows. The officer laid everything out, contracts, recordings, signatures. Every page had my name on it. Not my handwriting, but my life. They used your history, he explained. Your age, your trust, your love. I laughed then, a small broken sound. So love finally became expensive, I said. My son's confession. He dropped into the chair. I thought if I changed my number, if I stayed away long enough, it would all disappear, he said. I nodded slowly. That's what children believe, I replied. That time cleans what truth refuses to forgive. Tears rolled down his face. I never meant to hurt you. I reached across the table, not to comfort him, but to take back something invisible. Intent doesn't undo impact, I said. The choice that defined me. The officer looked at me again. We can still soften this, he offered. Keep names quiet, reduce the noise. I shook my head. No more soft, I said. No more quiet. I stood up. For years, I waited for my son to come back, I said. Today, I walked forward. The building began to crumble. Down the hall, raised voices echoed. Doors slammed. Footsteps ran. The woman screamed. They're pulling out, everything's collapsing. The officer smiled, just a little. That's what truth does, he said. It shakes foundations. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I didn't answer my son right away. The hallway smelled like old paper and fear. Every step echoed louder than my heartbeat. "What happens to me now?" he asked again, his voice small. Not angry. Not brave. Just scared. I turned slowly. "What happens," I said, choosing each word, "is that I stop protecting you from the weight of your own choices. When a mother lets go, they separated us at the doors." He reached for me without thinking, like a child reaching for a hand before crossing a street. I didn't pull away, but I didn't move closer either. "I carried you for 9 months," I said quietly. "I carried your secrets for years. Today, I put them down." The door closed between us. Not loudly. Final. Silence can be louder than screaming. I sat alone in a small waiting room. No clock. No window. Just a metal chair and my thoughts. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for someone else to decide my future. I wasn't asking permission. I wasn't begging to be believed. I already was. The phone that changed everything. The officer returned and handed me my phone. "You're going to get calls," he said, "from people who thought you'd stay quiet." As if on cue, the screen lit up. "Unknown number." I answered. A smooth voice slipped through the speaker. "We can still make this go away," the man said. "Money, privacy, peace." I smiled. "You already took enough from me," I replied. "And peace doesn't come from hiding." The line went dead. A different kind of strength. Outside, the air felt new. Not clean, but honest. A woman from an advocacy group approached me. "You don't have to do this alone," she said. I nodded. "For once," I answered. "I don't want to." The message that reached too late. That night, a message came through. From my son. "Mom, please, just tell me what to do." I stared at it for a long time. Then I typed back. "I already did. I told the truth." I put the phone down and slept without nightmares for the first time in years. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. The doorbell rang again. Not rushed. Not angry. Careful. That was what scared me most. I looked through the peephole and felt my knees weaken. 3 people stood outside. A woman in a plain navy dress, holding a folder tight to her chest. A tall man with kind eyes and tired shoulders. And behind them, a younger man, no more than 30, shifting his weight like he wished he were anywhere else. I opened the door halfway. "Yes." The woman spoke first, "Mrs. Halcyon Rowe." I hadn't heard my full name spoken out loud in a long time. "Yes," I said, "that's me." She exhaled slowly. "My name is Miriam, this is Daniel, and this is," she paused, glancing back, "Eli." The younger man looked at the ground. "We were hoping we could talk," she said, "just for a few minutes." Every part of me wanted to shut the door. But something in her voice, soft, careful, respectful, stopped me. I stepped aside. The stories no one told me about. We sat at my small kitchen table. The kettle screamed while I poured water into chipped cups. My hands shook, but I didn't apologize for it anymore. Miriam opened her folder. Inside were photos. Documents. Dates. Faces I recognized from nightmares. "I don't understand," I said quietly. "You weren't supposed to," Daniel replied. "That's how this worked for a long time." Miriam leaned forward. "Your son didn't just disappear after changing his number," she said. "He left behind damage, and people, and questions." Eli finally looked up. "My sister," he said, voice cracking, "trusted him." The room went still. The weight of shared pain. Eli spoke slowly, like every word was heavy. "She thought he loved her," he said. When things went wrong, she blamed herself. She never told us everything. She couldn't. My chest tightened. I wanted to say I'm sorry, but apologies felt small against wounds this deep. Miriam reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. You didn't cause this, she said firmly, but your courage, it opened a door. I swallowed hard. I was quiet for too long, I whispered. So were we, Daniel replied. When the truth starts to spread. They explained what had happened after I spoke up. How others had begun to talk. How whispers turned into records. How silence finally broke. Eli wiped his face. We thought we were alone, he said. Then we heard your story. I nodded slowly. I thought I was alone too. For the first time, the pain didn't feel like a private punishment. It felt shared. Carried together. A choice I never imagined having. Before they left, Miriam stood at the door. There will be a tension, she warned. Questions, people who will try to twist this. I sighed. They already tried. She smiled gently. Then you're stronger than you know. Eli hesitated before stepping outside. Thank you, he said, for choosing truth. The door closed behind them. I leaned against it, breathing deeply. The call that changed the night. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Again. I answered. Mom, my son's voice said, shaky and raw. People are calling me. They know things. What did you do? I closed my eyes. I stopped lying, I said. There was silence. Then a whisper. You ruined everything. I opened my eyes, steady. No, I replied. I saved what was left of myself. Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. The sun was barely awake when I opened the package. My hands knew before my eyes did. I hadn't touched this thing in over 20 years. Inside the box was an old cassette tape. Gray plastic, faded label, my handwriting. Family meeting, don't lose. My knees buckled. I sat on the floor, the cold seeping through my nightdress, the tape heavy in my palm like it had weight beyond plastic. I whispered, no, no, no. Because I remembered that night. The night I was told to be quiet. We were all there. My son. My husband. My sister-in-law. Even neighbors I thought were friends. I had tried to speak. Tried to explain. Tried to say something wasn't right. And someone, my own blood, had said, she's confused, let's not upset her. I had started recording that night because I knew no one would believe me later. Then they found the recorder. They laughed. They told me I was dramatic. They told me to stop. But I never threw the tape away. They did. Or so I thought. A voice from the past. I stared at the tape for a long time. Then I reached for the old player in the bottom drawer, the one I kept just in case. It still worked. When I pressed play, my younger voice filled the room. Clear, shaking, afraid. Please listen to me. I'm not sick. I'm not lying. I saw what happened. Then his voice. My son. Mom, stop. You're embarrassing yourself. My chest tightened so hard I thought I might pass out. Then another voice joined in, laughing. She's always like this. Just ignore her. I covered my mouth. I hadn't imagined it. I hadn't exaggerated. It was all there. Someone wanted me afraid. The note fell from the box again. You should have stayed quiet. I read it twice. Then a third time. And something inside me shifted. Not fear. Not panic. Anger. Slow, steady, sharp. I said out loud, you sent this to scare me. My phone rang. This time, it wasn't unknown. It was my son. The call I didn't expect to answer. I answered. Mom, he said quickly, I don't know what people are saying, but this has gone too far. I laughed. It came out broken. Do you remember the tape? I asked. Silence. Long. Heavy. "What tape?" he said. I smiled sadly. "The one where you told everyone I was crazy." His breathing changed. "Where did you get that?" he asked. "It came back to me," I replied. "Funny how truth does that." The cracks began to show. "You're hurting people," he said. "You're ruining families." I looked at the tape spinning slowly. "No," I said. "I'm ending lies." "You don't understand what this could cost me," he snapped. I stood up. "I paid the cost already," I said. "For years." He whispered, "Please, stop." I closed my eyes. "I can't," I said. "I already stopped once. It almost destroyed me." Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I stared at the photo until my eyes burned. The tape was mine, but the table under it was. It was clean, modern, white marble with gray lines running through it like cracks in ice. I knew that table. I had seen it once before, years ago, in my son's house, back when I was still allowed to visit. My heart thumped slow and heavy. "So you still have copies," I whispered. They had never planned to forget the truth. They had planned to control it. Fear was what they expected. The message was clear. Be quiet again. Go back to being small. Go back to being the old woman nobody listens to. I sat there for a long time, holding my phone, listening to the soft hum of the cassette player still spinning in the background like time refusing to stop. Then I laughed. Not loud. Not joyful. The kind of laugh that comes when fear finally loses its grip. "You're too late," I said to the empty room. What they didn't know. They thought the tape was the danger. It was. The danger was what I had done after finding it. That morning, before the package arrived, I had already met with someone. Not the police. Not a lawyer. Someone better. Someone who listened. Someone who asked questions. Someone who said, "Do you have proof?" And I had smiled and said, "I will." The second recording. I reached into the drawer again. Pulled out my phone. Pressed record. My voice was calm now. Steady. "This is me," I said. "I am not confused. I am not afraid. And I am done protecting people who never protected me." I paused. Then I added, "If anything happens to me, everything I know has already been shared." I saved the file. And sent it. The silence that followed. Minutes passed. Then an hour. No calls. No messages. No threats. That silence told me everything. They were scrambling. They were scared. For the first time in years, I was. When my son called again. It was almost dark when my phone rang. His name lit up the screen. I answered without hesitation. "What did you do?" he asked, his voice tight. "I told the truth," I said. "You had no right." "I had every right," I cut in gently. "You just didn't want me to use it." He exhaled hard. "You're forcing my hand." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "Good," I said. "I'm tired of mine being forced." A choice he never expected. There was a long pause. Then quietly he said, "What do you want?" I closed my eyes. I thought of the years I stayed silent. The birthdays I spent alone. The looks people gave me when they thought I wasn't looking. "I want my name back," I said. "My voice back. And my peace." His voice dropped to a whisper. "And if I can't give you that?" I smiled. "Then the truth will." Before I continue this story, kindly subscribe, like, turn on the bell, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I didn't sleep. I sat in my chair, wrapped in my old brown shawl, listening to the house breathe. Every creak sounded louder. Every shadow felt like it was watching me. But for the first time in years, I was not afraid of them. I was afraid of how much power I had finally taken back. When the sun came up, it came soft, gentle, like it wasn't here to scare me. I made tea. Not because I wanted it, but because routine kept my hands steady. I sat at the table and said out loud, "This is the day." The tape was already gone. Not destroyed. Delivered. Not to the police. Not to court. I sent it somewhere louder. Somewhere that couldn't be silenced with a phone number change. Years ago, my son helped me set up email. He laughed when I struggled. "Mom, nobody uses email like this anymore," he said. He was wrong. I had an old address, one nobody remembered, one tied to church groups, community boards, and a women's support circle I joined quietly after my husband died. That morning, I sent one message. No drama. No threats. Just truth. This is my voice. This is my story. If you ever wondered why some mothers go quiet, listen. And I attached the recording. By noon, my phone vibrated so much I had to put it face down. My son called first. Then his wife. Then a number I didn't know. I ignored them all. Because the messages weren't coming to me anymore. They were going around me. They heard the tape. They heard his voice, young, angry, careless. They heard mine, small, scared, begging him to stop. They heard silence after. And people don't forget sounds like that. It was early evening when someone knocked. I didn't jump. I didn't hide. I opened the door. My son stood there, eyes red, face pale. "You ruined everything," he said. I looked at him for a long moment. "No," I said softly. "I stopped lying." He tried to explain. Tried to blame stress, youth, confusion. I listened. Then I said the words he never expected to hear. "I forgive myself." He froze. "I forgive myself," I repeated, "for staying quiet, for protecting you, for believing silence was love." His shoulders dropped. For the first time, he looked small. I didn't shout. I didn't threaten. I didn't ask for anything. I said, "You don't get access to me anymore." And I closed the door. That night I slept. The calls slowed. The whispers spread. Not gossip. Understanding. Women I barely knew sent messages. "I believe you. Thank you for speaking. You helped me say my truth too." And that's when I understood. My story didn't end with revenge. It ended with release. My son changed his number. But he couldn't change what he did. And I changed something more important. I stopped waiting for someone to save me. Because I already had. Myself. I want to tell you something I never said out loud before. Silence is heavy. It sits on your chest when you try to sleep. It follows you into the kitchen. It stands behind you when you smile for people who think you're fine. For a long time, silence was my closest companion. Not because I liked it, but because I thought it was my duty. I was taught that a good mother endures, that she protects, that she sacrifices. So I did. I swallowed words that burned my throat. I smiled when my heart felt cracked. I told myself, this is what strong women do. But strength should not feel like disappearing. After everything came out, the house felt strange. Too quiet. No phone buzzing. No footsteps. No lies hanging in the air. Just me. I sat on the edge of my bed and realized something scared me more than the truth ever did. I didn't know who I was without silence. I thought once I spoke, my world would fall apart. That people would shout. That I would be judged. That I would regret opening my mouth. But none of that happened. What happened was slower. Softer. The kind of change that sneaks in like morning light. The first night, I slept for 6 straight hours. No dreams. No shaking awake. No fear. Just rest. I woke up and cried, not because I was sad, but because I didn't realize how tired I had been for so many years. People say, "Why didn't you keep it to yourself?" They don't understand. Keeping it to myself was killing me. Truth didn't destroy my family. Lies did. Truth just stopped the bleeding. This story isn't about winning. It's not about revenge. It's not about proving anything. It's about healing the part of me that thought my pain didn't matter. I didn't take something from anyone. I gave something back to myself. One day, someone asked me, "Do you regret speaking up?" I didn't even think before answering. No, I don't regret choosing air over drowning. I don't regret choosing honesty over pretending. And I don't regret choosing myself, even if it came late. Love doesn't ask you to shrink. Love doesn't tell you to stay quiet while it hurts you. Love doesn't erase your voice to protect someone else's comfort. Real love listens, even when it's uncomfortable. Not everyone stayed. Some people walked away. Some stopped calling. Some pretended nothing happened. And for the first time in my life, I didn't chase them. I learned that peace sometimes comes from letting people go. I met myself again. I started doing small things. Drinking tea slowly. Sitting in the sun. Taking walks without rushing home. I laughed at my own jokes. I talked to myself kindly. I realized I wasn't broken. I was buried. If you're listening, this part is for you. If you're watching this and your chest feels tight. If you're holding something you've never said. If you think you're too old, too tired, or too late. Listen to me. It is never too late to stop carrying what hurts you. Your truth is not an attack. Your pain is not an inconvenience. You are not dramatic for wanting peace. You are human. And humans deserve rest. Freedom doesn't always look loud. Sometimes it looks like calm. Like a deep breath. Like an empty room that feels safe. Like sleeping without fear. That's what I gained. Not applause. Peace. I didn't stop loving. I stopped disappearing. And there is a difference. This is where my story rests. Not in shame. Not in silence. But in truth. And if my voice helped you feel less alone, then it was worth every trembling word. I carried pain for years because I thought that's what love demanded. Now I know better. Love should never cost you your voice. If this story touched you, please subscribe, like, and turn on the notification bell for more emotional stories like this. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Somewhere out there, I might be reading. Thank you for listening to mine.